Hello and welcome to another green room with Infinite Green. I'm Scott McIntyre, along with the Chief Illuminator, John Blum. Today we have a special guest, Kevin Knebl. I got that
Hey,
right,
Kevin.
I think.
You actually pronounce it better than I do.
We got introduced to Kevin at a tech conference he was speaking at last summer, and thought that his message about leadership, sales, and how we're a people business, a people-enabled business, really complemented what we do here at Infinite Green and how we approach leadership development and enhancing company process and whatnot at Infinite Green. So I thought it'd be very interesting to have Kevin on today and talk through his journey a little bit, and how he views the world. And I thought everybody would get a kick out of having a conversation focused on leadership. So Kevin, why don't you give us a little bit about your background and how you got into this business and how that evolved over time.
Yeah, Scott and John, thank you for having me. And I hope you don't mind that I'm a little casual. On the days that I'm not on an airplane or a stage, I tend to put on a baseball hat and get casual. So thank you for having me. And I can't believe it was a year or two ago that we crossed paths in Colorado. Man, time flies.
It does.
So I actually went to college for music. I'm a classically trained piano player. So I actually went to college for music, and I played piano professionally for a number of years in the New York City area. In the early 90s, I got married, and I realized I needed to make more money. This was pre-internet, so I had to go look in the want-ads and the classifieds. If you millennials don't know what that is, Google it. And I had to look for a job. And the only job I could find was sales, which was completely outside of my comfort zone. I never in a million years imagined I would get in business. I never in a billion years imagined I'd get in sales, but life is funny. So I was in sales in 1992, but I had some mentors that taught me that long-term success is always going to come down to our ability to connect with people on a human level. So I never really studied closing techniques and all that kind of stuff. I really studied things like how to win friends and influence people, Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, and I ended up becoming the top salesperson for 4 different companies in 4 different industries. I was the top salesperson in the world for an international consulting company with 350 salespeople in 15 countries. So I had a very successful sales career. Eventually, that morphed into a speaking coaching business. I left my corporate sales career back in 2009. I now own 4 different. I actually own 3 businesses, and I'm a co-owner in a 4th business. So I've had kind of an interesting journey, from piano player to this guy that owns a number of businesses. But really, at the heart of everything that I do, it's about helping people remember and utilize people skills. Most companies hire me because they want to increase sales, they want to make more money, they want to get referrals. But at the core of all of that is the ability to sincerely and authentically connect with people. So whether I'm doing a short keynote at a conference, or whether I'm doing a 1-day or a 2-day boot camp, everything's always going to come back to the statement, all things being equal, people do business with and refer business to people they know, like, and trust. And I basically show people how to be more knowable, likable, trustable in a sincere and authentic way, not in some reverse psychology, mind control ninja kind of way. I don't know if any of that made any sense. What did you hear in that, guys?
Well, I do want to challenge you on one thing. If you played piano professionally, or at least tried to, and I'm a fellow musician who's been signed to a label and tried to make ends meet and those kind of things, but you really were in sales in the hardest way possible, right? So I mean,
I'll make it even crazier, John. My ex-wife, who's now my friend, I met my ex-wife when she booked me to play piano at her wedding to another man.
That's awesome.
That is absolutely 100% true.
So
Yeah.
I learned something on the music topic. I learned something about Kevin John when we played golf this summer. That he's as big of Rush fan or bigger Rush fan than we are.
Oh yeah.
And I have to say I did get Rush tickets at Ball Arena for October 5th next year.
Were they like $2 million?
I had to sell a car. I had to sell my car to buy them, but we got third row front and center.
Oh my God.
Ball Arena next October for Rush, so that should be fun. I haven't seen him. I don't know since I think I saw him at the Minnesota State Fair. Yeah, almost 18 years ago.
Yeah, it's really wild that they're going back out on the road. Yeah, but yeah, I'm a huge Rush fan. Huge.
Cool.
One of the things that stuck with me, Kevin, as I sat through one of your education sessions here locally in Colorado, was how you reach out in LinkedIn to people. And one of the things that really stuck with me was like in your initial reach out in LinkedIn, you're not proposing, right? You're not proposing marriage in your first communication. You're not asking for the sale. It's like, you need to buy me, you need to buy my services right away. Yeah. And all you're trying to do is get started with that relationship, that human connection that you talked about.
Yeah.
And, it's not, a day doesn't go by where I don't delete 4 or 5 messages from LinkedIn saying, hey, did you know we sell this? Right. And that's really kind of kept me centered around, wow, let's build a connection. Let's build a relationship before we get involved, to a deeper level. And as a company like ours, that's 100% referral based. That really stuck with me. And I think that a lot of people could use that message.
Well, the way it looks to me, Scott, is that, and I'm going to sound philosophical, but I'm not trying to be Aristotle. And if you're old enough to remember Bill and Ted, I'm not trying to be Socrates. Okay. so there's this thing called gravity. You guys have probably heard of it. And like I have this stone heart. Every time I drop it, it goes down. Well, if I was in Minnesota, it would do the same thing. If I woke up this morning and I decided to identify as something other than what I am, it would still do. Gravity doesn't care. Gravity is a principle. What makes a principle is that there are no exceptions. And what I've noticed over the years is that most people in business are operating under an unrecognized belief. And the unrecognized belief is that life works different in business than outside of business. And then I come along and I go, do you have any evidence to support that? And of course, people look at me like a deer in the headlights because they're not used to people talking simplicity because they've been trained to think in overly complex ways. And I go, do you have any evidence to support that life works differently in business than outside of business? And if they're honest enough to engage in that conversation, and most people are not, but for the ones that are honest enough to engage in that conversation, they come to the realization that there is no difference. If there were, then gravity would work different in my office than it works in my home. So Scott, refresh my memory. What's your wife's first name?
Elizabeth.
So when you first met Elizabeth, when you first laid eyes on Elizabeth, were you attracted to her?
I'd say so.
Do you consider yourself a relatively honest, ethical, and moral man?
Mostly.
Well, I would assume then if you're an honest, ethical, moral man and you laid eyes on this hot woman, you must have walked up to her and said, hi, I don't know your name. My name is Scott. You're really hot. We should make out.
I don't think that would have gone over too well.
But then why do people do it all day long in business?
Right.
Yeah.
And they do. And most of my clients are type A off the charts. And when I use that silly example with them, they go, Kev, come on, I'm not that blunt with my prospects. And I go, oh, I assure you, you are.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
And I go, let's go look at your last 10 emails and let's go. And what they don't realize they're doing is they're completely disregarding common sense.
Yeah.
I ask people the simplest questions. Do you have a lot of evidence that walking up to your ideal prospects and trying to seduce them with how you can help them solve their problem, they immediately open up their wallet and throw money at you? And they go, no. And I go, but you're doing it all day long. Obviously, there's a disconnect somewhere. And I'm not saying that we need to slow down the sales process. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying if you just slow your mind down for a second and you just look around, what you did with Elizabeth, Scott, was you started a conversation. It didn't mean you had some hidden agenda or you were some creepy guy. You were just smart enough to realize you don't walk up to a pretty girl you've never met before and propose marriage. That's insane.
Yeah.
But people do it all day long. Now, remember, I mentioned that I was the top salesperson for 4 different companies in 4 different industries. I didn't say that to be arrogant. I said that to establish credibility that when I say something about sales, maybe I've got enough evidence on my tree to suggest that people should slow down and listen. And they don't, because they think, oh, it can't be as easy as Kevin's saying, even though Kevin has all the evidence to prove that he's right.
Yeah.
You know, when Galileo went to the Pope and said, by the way, planets circle the sun, they don't circle the earth. Even though that was true, he was told, if you don't take that back, we will kill you. They were literally going to kill him. Now, he took it back. What most people don't know is he lived under house arrest for the rest of his life. Okay? But often in a world of lies, the truth can be very threatening. And all I'm doing is I'm appealing to people's common sense, assuming that they have some. And I'm just saying, you don't really have a lot of evidence that walking up to strangers and hitting them with your elevator pitch causes them to do business with you. You continue to choose that strategy. Why don't we just connect with people that I'm not talking about schmoozing or brown nosing or sucking up. I'm just saying, connect with people on a human level, and then I can show you how to easily move the conversation to your product or service without it coming across as a blatant sales pitch. It's so simple. So that's really all. I help people make hundreds of millions of dollars by getting them to realize that they're in the people business disguised as a financial advisor or a CX company or this or that. But at the end of the day, it's all about human connection.
Yeah, my personal proof point around that is when John and I started Infinite Green 17 years ago, we thought we could help companies grow better, grow faster, be more agile, drive revenue, lower expense, and overall create value through modeling and strategy and process. And I think we quickly realized within the first 6 months-ish that you can't, to get someone to trust you, to go manipulate their company in a way or to enhance their company in a way, they have to be able to trust you, right? And to build trust, you have to have conversations and you have to tell stories. And you have to do that almost one person at a time, right? If you want a whole organization to follow you down this primrose path or to change, that trust has to be there. And I realized quickly that we're not a strategy company. We're a leadership change management company. Right. We need to get people on board with a model, right? A strategic model. And usually they have one. They just haven't been able to execute against it because no one trusts it, because they didn't take the time to gain and earn people's trust to allow them to adapt, right? Or to, in your analogy, to get a sales pitch, to buy a service. Right? Buying a service and changing around it are kind of the same things, right? You're enabling change. And change is scary. And in order to get people over the hump, you have to build trust. And to build trust, it takes time, storytelling, hand-holding, you name it. But it's all relationship driven.
Trust.
We've got to do it. We've got to do it on the human level, not the strategic level, not the model, design, service, whatever it is we're selling.
And here's the irony of ironies. As technology advances, and there's no reason to think it's not going to continue. As technology advances, those of us that understand that we're in the human business, actually, it becomes easier and easier to succeed. That's the irony of it's actually, the more technology advances, the more people need reminding that they're humans dealing with other humans,
Right.
which is really all I've been doing for the last 30 years is just reminding people, it's not the 8-track player or the cassette deck or the CD. It's about the Zeppelin playing. It's about the Rush and the Genesis and the Yes and the Thelonious Monk and the Miles Davis and the Beethoven play. The music hasn't changed. It's just the delivery mechanism has changed, right? I'm listening to Rush in 2025 on my phone, but it's the same Rush I was listening to in 1977 on my record player in my bedroom.
Right.
And people get so enamored of the tools that they become tools of their tools.
Yeah, I have a perspective, and I love your thoughts on this. I believe that, to your point, kind of you get to this process of where is the transaction going to happen, and I believe that people get up in the morning, lift their head off the pillow, and say, I think 99% of the people go, I'm going to go try to do a good job today.
Right.
I'm not going to go try to propose on the first date. I'm not going to go try to sell something to somebody. So I think the activity around that is pure for the most part up front. I think there's a lot of good intention. And I think back to Scott's point about how we started this business, I didn't realize that until we really got into, wow, there's a pipeline here you have to develop. And there's some relationships that take longer than just one-to-one and one interaction, right? And I think, and not losing that faith that path is a good path to go down, regardless of whether they buy or not. And I believe that whole idea of, there is something that gets stuck in the middle of that. I woke up, took my shower, I'm ready to go to work or remote or whatever, and I want to do a good job. And I think that's something, that level of optimism, I believe, is a little bit missing in the world today. I think we look at things in a polar. Social media is so polar opposite. It's either you are or you aren't. You agree or you disagree. There's not like a lot of room in between. And I believe that that's similar to what you were talking about from a connection standpoint. And to me, it's the lazy way of trying to fill out your sheet and say, or Salesforce and say, yeah, I made 60 contacts today. Because one more or two more places where you could do a look on what happened in their company today. Was there anything noteworthy? Is there anything in your LinkedIn profile that I can connect to my family or my desires or likes or whatever, my hobbies? And I think that's the stuff that when you sit down and really think about how you're cracking into that relationship and people business, I believe it just takes one or two more steps, but it's that starting point of, everybody really comes from a place of, I want to do a good job. And I also want to do a good job as a salesperson. And it doesn't mean that I have to be transactional in every situation. Is that fair to say?
It is fair to say. It's just an innocent forgetting that people do business with and refer business to people they know, like, and trust.
Right.
I stand on stages all around the world. I pull up a slide, and I am definitely not a death by PowerPoint kind of guy. But I always pull up this slide that says, all things being equal, people do business with and refer business to people they know, like, and trust. 100% of the time, I look at the audience and I say, is there anyone in the room that would disagree with that? I have never had a human being disagree with that.
Yeah.
And then I look at them and I go, well, then at the end of the day, it's all about know, like, trust. What are you doing to create sincere and authentic know, like, trust in the mind of the buyer? And at that point, it gets very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And I just look at the audience and I tell them, I'm not trying to make you feel stupid. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm bringing to your attention that the most obvious thing in the room is the thing almost everybody overlooks. The fish doesn't know it's wet.
Right.
You think, I do a lot of work in financial services. I talk to, I have thousands of conferences I speak at in the financial services world. And I'm constantly reminding them, yes, you're a financial advisor, but you're agreeing with me that it's all about know, like, trust, and nowhere in that sentence does it say financial advisor, right?
Right.
What are you doing to create sincere and authentic know, like, trust in the mind of the prospect? And they just look at me like I'm speaking Chinese. And I tell them, you intellectually understand that statement. Even a 5-year-old would intellectually understand that statement.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't understand how to experientially make it real. Which goes back to Scott, when Scott said, when I connect with people on LinkedIn, I don't talk like an international speaker, author, coach, entrepreneur. I talk like a guy. Hey, Scott, it was nice meeting you at the working meeting last week. Knowing LinkedIn is the world Rolodex, let's connect. Go Broncos, Kev. And he accepts my invitation. And then after he accepts it, I send him a message that says, hey, Scott, thanks for connecting with me here on LinkedIn. I appreciate it. Hope you're doing well. What's new in your world? Kev. I'm just opening up it's not some reverse psychology.
Right.
It's just two guys talking, right? If you put a gun to my head and you said, Kev, what is your expertise in? Not what you think it's in to stroke your own ego. What is your expertise in that you have evidence to show that you have expertise in that? My answer is really simple. All I've been studying for 30 years are conversation and relationship building skills. When a human being is good at conversation and relationship building skills, they are going to be successful at whatever it is they choose to do.
Yeah.
End of story. But people operate under this, well, if I just become a black belt in CX,
right.
Well, then the statement would be, all things being equal, people do business with and refer business to people that are black belts in CX. That's not the statement. All things being equal, people do business with and refer business to people that, when I first heard that in 1994, it blew my simple mind. Because I just said, okay, the all things being equal part just is my product or service. Yes, I should learn about my product or service. It was the second half of the sentence, the know, like, trust part. I said, well, then all I got to do is get really good at creating sincere and authentic know, like, trust. And that's just all about human connection. So why don't I just study things like how to win friends and influence people, take a sincere interest in other people, don't talk so much, ask smart questions, shut up, listen to their answers instead of trying to formulate your next question when you're not listening to them, because you can't do two things at once. You're either listening to the other person or you're thinking about your next brilliant, oh, I got to impress you with how smart I am. I love Columbo. Remember Columbo? Most of the people watching probably are too young to get Columbo. Remember at the end of Columbo, he acted like the stupidest person in the room. He was not stupid, right? As he's walking out of the room, hey, one more question. What about
one more question?
Right, because to the extent that you have sincere curiosity with your prospects will hire you. Because everybody else is just giving them some clever line to try to get them over the closing line and get them ink the deal. But for me, I just ask questions, not as a strategy. I'm just curious. Sincere curiosity is a superpower.
Yeah. And it's the purest form of open-ended questions that you learn in every sales 101 pitch, right? It really is. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, what's your favorite? I know you've had a lot of engagements and whatever. What is like one or two reactions like after the fact? So somebody's you've spoken at an event or you've talked to somebody months, weeks, days, hours, whatever. They come back and go, Kev, here's how I really wrote myself into that story differently. What do you have some good stories like what somebody reacted to and went, wow, that really changed my life or whatever? Any like things stand out to you on one of your customers or attendees at one of your leadership seminars?
Here's where my mind goes, John. One of the things I teach, I teach a simple 3-step system. Step one, no matter how good you are at what you do, you have to have ways to both find and be found by the right people. And I have boatloads of ways that I teach how to do that. Some of them involve social media, some of them don't involve social. It's not all about LinkedIn, right?
Mm-hmm.
But number one, no matter how good you are, you still have to have ways to both find and be found by the right people. In a world where the internet exists, that's easier now than it's ever been. Okay.
Right.
Step two, once you find them or they find you, you're going to have to get them into a conversation without them showing you the door. That's where most people drop the ball, because most people are starting with an elevator pitch or marketing. And I'm not putting down elevator pitches and marketing. There's a time and a place for that.
Yeah.
What I'm pointing at is the power of conversation skills. I've been tracking my opening rate for 32 years. I have an 87% response rate on my initial attempt at starting a conversation with a stranger. Let that sink in. 87% of the time, if I want to get a stranger into a conversation, I can do it on my first attempt. That is not an indication that I'm a social media guru. It's an indication that I've studied conversation skills.
Right.
Okay? So step one, you have to have a way to find and be found by the right people. Step two, you have to have ways to get people into a conversation without them showing you the door. And then step three is knowing that not everybody you get into a conversation is going to be ready and willing to do something with you. You better have some methods for how you're going to stay in communication with those people, but those methods better not turn you into a nuisance or a pest. Most of the methods that people in business try to use to stay in contact with their prospects that are not ready to engage them right now turn them into a nuisance or a pest. I have developed a system that does never turns you into a nuisance or a pest, actually builds know, like, trust, so that when they are ready to have a conversation with you, you've already overcome the skepticism and the cynicism to a large degree.
Mm-hmm.
That's my prelude to what I'm about to tell you to answer your question. I had a guy in 2012 who was the head of training and development for Gartner, which is an international consulting company. I know you guys know that company. That guy reached out to me. I didn't know him from Adam. He reached out to me in February of 2012 saying, I've heard about what you're doing out there in the business world and sales and all this relationship marketing stuff. I'm not looking to hire you. I'm just looking to have a conversation with you. I said, great. We had a nice conversation on the phone. At the end of the conversation, I said, what would you like to see happen from here, Ed? He said, nothing. Maybe I'll hire you a couple years down the road for a conference. Most people would just sit back waiting for the guy to call back. Not me. I said to myself, I need to stay top of mind with this guy in a way that doesn't turn me into a pest. So I used one of many methods, and here's what I did. I have a simple card that has my picture, my contact information, and white space in the middle. I sent him a card once a month for 9 consecutive months. Never once did I talk about my product or service. In February, he called me in February. Here's what I wrote with my blue Sharpie marker. This is high touch in a high-tech world. Hi, Ed. Happy Valentine's Day. I like you, but not in a weird way, Kev. I put it in an envelope. I wrote his name on the envelope, licked a stamp, mailed it to him. Never heard back. A month later, it's now March. Hi, Ed. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Don't forget to wear green, even if you're Japanese. Kev. Licked a stamp, mailed it to him. I did it for 9 consecutive months. I never heard back from the guy. On the 9th month, he calls me. This is what he says to me. Kev, love your postcards. I've been training and developing salespeople for 25 years. I have never had anyone ever stay in contact with me in a lighthearted, fun, professional way. What you are teaching is way beyond LinkedIn, social media, or sales. I need you in London next month to train my Gartner UK-based sales team. He ended up paying me $500,000. He paid me $100,000 a year for 5 consecutive years, sent me to London, England 4 years in a row, Sydney, Australia, Greenwich, Connecticut. and it came from 9 effing postcards. And people look at me and go, "Oh, Kevin's a social media guru." And I go, "Do you call Picasso a canvas guru? Do you
Not
call
typically.
Picasso a granite guru? No." So do I know a little bit about LinkedIn? Sure, I write books about it, but it's not about LinkedIn. It's about the human connection, right?
Right.
So I run around the world reminding people how to sincerely and authentically connect with other people. And all of a sudden they start making boatloads of money because they realize we've just gotten too slick. Let's go back to being normal human beings. So I don't know if that answers the question you asked me, John. That's where I went, though.
Perfect.
Story.
No, that's exactly. And again, it's the ultimately they've written themselves into your curiosity, right? And I think that's the part that it's probably opened up a lot of introspection, right? Obviously, but from a leadership standpoint, when you're leading leaders or you're leading sales folks in a sales environment or whatever, right? I mean, again, you're cracking the code based on kind of their own curiosity about themselves, just as much as your curiosity about what makes them tick and where they might, be interested in a personal touch handwritten postcard.
The way that Scott, I would predict, and Scott, tell me if I'm wrong, the way that Scott got Elizabeth interested in him was he demonstrated sincere curiosity to her. Why would it be any different in business?
It's not.
Yeah.
Gravity is the same.
That's a great message. Yeah. So we're at time already. So thank you for, yes, Kevin, thank you for taking the time and sharing some of these stories. I think they made an impact on me. I know with John when we first met you.
Yeah.
And I've been to your sessions since, and I think it's a great reminder that everyone in sales is in the relationship business. It doesn't matter what kind of widget they sell. So if you want to know more behind the scenes about Kevin, you can meet with me and I can give you the inside scoop on Kevin. You can use the QR code in the upper right hand corner. You can reach out to Kevin on LinkedIn if you're interested in hearing more or about Infinite Green and the services we offer. But
Scott, if you ever want me to come back, Scott, and just show my screen and show you some ways to create sincere and authentic know, like, trust with people on LinkedIn and how that leads to client acquisition, Charles, if I can help in any way, I'm happy to help. And I just want to thank you for having me, guys. You guys are great. I hope we get to cross paths face to face in real life before too long.
For sure.
Sounds great, Kevin. Thanks so much. Love your message and love your story. I can't wait to hear you play piano one of these days too. So I'll stay connected in music and in curiosity, and we'll see where it goes.
Cool. All right. Go Broncos.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right.